The emergency beacon screamed across the void of space, its desperate cry piercing through dimensions to reach the massive crystalline towers of the Galactic Council. Lerms within the central spire, alarms blared as communication officers scrambled. To decode the transmission, Ambassador Thelver burst through the council chamber doors, his four muscular arms clutching data tablets, while his scaled blue skin glistened with nervous sweat. The chamber fell silent as the towering alien approached the central podium, his reptilian features twisted with barely contained panic. Honored members of the council. Thelver's voice cracked as his universal translator converted, his rapid clicks and whistles into standard galactic speech. I bring grave news from the Zilani homeworld of Cathara Prime. The holographic display above the chamber flickered to life, showing a beautiful blue-green world surrounded by an ominous ring of dark metallic ships. Council Admiral Vexstar, distinguished warrior from the insectoid Mantheri species, leaned forward with his compound eyes, reflecting the tactical data. The Krex Empire has broken all treaties, Thelver continued, his voice growing stronger with desperate determination. Their armada of 300 dreadnoughts has surrounded our world, or 3 billion Zilani souls are trapped like prey in a hunter's net, our entire defense fleet. It lasted only 6 hours against their assault. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and angry chittering from various species. The Krex Empire had been expanding aggressively for decades, but they had always maintained a facade of respecting council authority. This was an open declaration of war against the galactic community, Counselor Murden, an elderly being whose species resembled walking trees with flowing bark skin, raised one of his branch-like appendages for silence. How long before their orbital bombardment begins? They've given us 48 hours to surrender unconditionally, Thelver replied, his translator barely keeping up with his rapid speech. They demand complete submission to Krex rule, the dismantling of our government, and the conscription of our youth into their slave armies. Admiral Vexstar's mandibles clicked nervously as he consulted his tactical displays. Our main battle fleets are engaged in the spiral wars on the far rim. The Krex planned this perfectly. They know we cannot spare significant forces for at least 3 standard weeks. 3 weeks? Thelver's 4 arms gestured desperately at the hologram. Admiral, my people will be dead or enslaved in 2 days. The Krex do not show mercy to those who resist. The weight of helplessness settled over the chamber, like a suffocating blanket. For all their advanced technology and political unity, the Galactic Council faced the harsh reality that they could not be everywhere at once. The Krex had chosen their moment with predatory precision. Counselor Murdena's ancient voice creaked like old wood in a storm. There is ... perhaps one option we have not considered. His bark skin shifted colors with uncertainty. The humans recently established diplomatic contact through the outer system relays, the Deathworlders. Admiral Vexstar's compound eyes reflected genuine disbelief. Murden, their planet classification reads like a nightmare catalog. Extreme. Weather, active volcanism, predatory ecosystems, toxic atmosphere variations. What could primitives from such a hostile rock possibly contribute to modern warfare? Their world classification also indicates significant military potential, Murden replied carefully. Every preliminary report suggests their entire civilization, evolved under constant threat. They may possess unconventional tactical knowledge. Thelver stepped forward, desperation overriding diplomatic protocol. Honorable Counselor, with respect, what can one primitive world do against the Krex Empire's war machine? They probably still use chemical propulsion and projectile weapons. But Murden was already activating the quantum relay communicator. The massive crystalline device hummed to life, sending signals across impossible distances through folded spacetime. Within minutes, a response signal locked onto the transmission. The holographic display shimmered and resolved into the image of a young human female. Her dark hair was pulled back severely from a face that seemed carved from stone. Not beautiful in the conventional sense of most species, but possessing an intensity that made every being in the chamber pay attention. The uniform was simple, practical, and somehow more intimidating than the ornate ceremonial armor worn by other galactic military leaders. This is Admiral Park Hejin of the Terran Defense Force, the human said without preamble. Her voice carried an odd quality, calm and professional, but with an underlying edge that suggested vast reserves of barely controlled violence. "We have received and analyzed the Zilani distress call through your relay network." Thelver stepped closer to the display, his translator working frantically. "Admiral Park, I am Ambassador Thelver. My people face extinction within hours. The Galactic Council's forces cannot reach us in time. We need help." The human's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her dark eyes. "Ambassador, what is the current tactical situation?" 300 Krex dreadnoughts in orbital blockade formation. Unknown number of ground assault troops and dropships. Complete communications blackout with our surface. Thelver's voice cracked with emotion. "We have no military assets remaining." Park nodded once, then spoke to someone off-screen. "Colonel, initiate Emergency Protocol 7. Full fleet mobilization. All available assets." She turned back to the galactic leaders. "Fleet deployment is authorized. Its estimated time of arrival at Zilani space, 72 hours. The council chamber fell into absolute silence. Even the ambient hum of the station's systems seemed muted. Finally, Thelver found his voice. "Admiral, forgive me, but how many ships can your world spare for this mission?" Admiral Park's response was delivered with the same calm certainty she might use to order lunch. "All of them." The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council staring at empty air. In the depths of space, humanity was going to war. Captain Kim Taewon stood at the airlock of his flagship, watching as the alien delegation approached through the docking tube. The Iron Phoenix groaned softly around them, a sound that always reminded him of a sleeping giant preparing to wake. His ship wasn't the largest in the human fleet, but her battle scars and weapon arrays told the story of a vessel built for one purpose. War Ambassador Thelver emerged first from the transport pod, his four arms clutching support rails as he took his first steps aboard a human warship. The Zilani diplomat's reptilian features showed obvious strain as his eyes adjusted to the dim red lighting that humans preferred for combat operations. Behind him came three other alien observers, a Galactic Council military assessor, a Manthuri, intelligence officer, and what appeared to be a floating crystalline being that communicated through light patterns. "Welcome aboard the Iron Phoenix," Kim said, his voice echoing slightly in the metal corridor. "I apologize for the accommodations. We're not really set up for diplomatic visits." Thelver's universal translator worked overtime as he tried to process the sheer scale of what surrounded him. The corridor wasn't like the flowing organic curves of most galactic vessels. Everything was angular, functional, and built to withstand punishment. Massive conduits ran along the ceiling, carrying power to weapon systems that hummed with barely contained energy. "Your vessel is substantial," Thelver managed, his four hands gesturing nervously at the reinforced bulkheads around them. Each wall panel was thick enough to stop artillery rounds, and blast doors were positioned every 50 meters along the main corridors. Kim glanced around at what he considered a perfectly normal military environment. "This is a light cruiser," he replied with genuine matter-of-factness. Admiral Park commanded, "We bring the real firepower for this mission." As they walked deeper into the ship, Thelver caught glimpses through reinforced windows of the human crew at work. Unlike the diverse, colorful uniforms common in galactic society, every human wore identical dark gray combat suits. They moved with military precision. There was something else, an intensity that reminded him of predators preparing for a hunt. They reached the observation deck just as the main fleet was completing its assembly. Through the reinforced transparent steel windows, space was filled with insight that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about human capabilities. The human fleet stretched across several thousand kilometers of space, and every single vessel looked like it had been designed by someone who viewed warfare as an art form. These weren't the elegant, streamlined ships common to galactic civilization. Human vessels were angular fortresses of metal and ceramic armor, bristling with weapon emplacements that seemed to cover every possible firing angle. The smallest frigates were larger than most alien heavy cruisers, their hulls covered in sensor arrays and missile tubes. The destroyers looked like flying weapons platforms, with massive railgun batteries running the length of their spines, and the battleships ... The battleships looked like mobile space stations designed specifically to end worlds. "By the void," whispered the Manthari observer, his compound eyes reflecting the running lights of the assembled fleet. "How many vessels do humans typically deploy for rescue missions?" "This isn't typical," Kim admitted. But Admiral Park doesn't believe in half measures when lives are at stake. Communications Officer Lee So-young approached with a data pad, her young face serious with concentration. At barely 25 standard years, she was younger than most alien cadets. But her eyes held the same predatory focus that seemed common. "To all human military personnel, Sir Admiral Park requests permission to begin psychological operations against Krek's forces." Kim nodded without hesitation. "Granted." Full-spectrum broadcast. Within minutes, the human fleet began transmitting across 47 different radio frequencies. In every known Krex, dialect and sublanguage. The message was simple, direct, and delivered in the flat, emotionless tone that humans seem to favor for military communications. "Attention Krex forces currently occupying the Zalani system. You have 72 hours to withdraw all military assets and release civilian populations. This is your only warning. Failure to comply will result in total military response. Do not negotiate. We do not take prisoners. Do not show mercy to those who threaten our allies." Thelver's scaled skin shifted to a sickly green color as his translator processed the implications. "Captain Kim, surely this is mere intimidation. Standard psychological warfare to encourage surrender?" Kim turned to study the alien diplomat with genuine confusion, as if Thelver had asked why water was wet. "Ambassador, why would we lie about something like that? Lying in military communications is inefficient and potentially dangerous to our own forces." The crystalline being pulsed with rapid light patterns that his translator rendered as nervous energy. "Captain, your species broadcasts surrender demands as if they were weather reports. Do humans not engage in preliminary negotiations? Diplomatic exchanges? Warnings, escalation protocols?" "We just did," Kim replied simply. "That was the negotiation." Meanwhile, deep in the command section of the fleet's flagship, Admiral Park, Heijin stood before a massive holographic tactical display surrounded by her senior staff. The Soul's Hammer, humanity's newest and most powerful battleship, served as the nerve center for an operation that would reshape galactic understanding of human military doctrine. Major Choi Jin-seok, the chief tactical officer, manipulated the hologram to show Krek's fleet positions around the Zalani homeworld. At 32, he was considered young for such a position. But his tactical assessments had never been wrong in 12 years of service. "Ma'am, intelligence indicates standard Krek's operational doctrine. They overwhelm local defense forces with superior numbers, then demand surrender through fear of orbital bombardment. Historical analysis shows they typically accept capitulation and install puppet governments rather than engaging in prolonged occupation." Admiral Park studied the enemy positions with the same intensity she might examine a chessboard. "Their mistake, Major. They've never fought someone who considers mercy a luxury we can't afford when our friends are threatened. What's our tactical assessment?" Lieutenant Commander Song Minji looked up from her intelligence station, her fingers dancing across displays showing real-time analysis of Krek's ship movements. "Admiral, should we attempt formal diplomatic contact with Krek's command before initiating combat operations?" Standard galactic protocol suggests. Park's laugh cut through the bridge chatter like a blade through silk. It wasn't cruel or mocking. It was the sound of someone who found genuine humor in an absurd suggestion. "Officer Song, we are the diplomatic contact. When 3 billion civilians are held hostage, talking is what the enemy wants us to do while they strengthen their positions." She turned back to the tactical display. "Prepare the fleet for full engagement protocols. All weapon systems online. All crew to battle stations. We end this in one engagement." As alarms began sounding throughout the human fleet, every alien observer felt the same chill of realization. They weren't watching a rescue mission. They were witnessing the deployment of a war machine that had been refined through centuries. Of surviving on the most dangerous planet in known space, the humans were going to war. and the galaxy was about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world. The Krex blockade had strangled the Zilani homeworld for 8 long days when space itself seemed to tear open at the system's edge. Reality rippled and twisted as 47 human vessels dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, angular holes gleaming dully against the starfield. Admiral Krexvar lounged in his command. Thrown aboard the massive dreadnought Bone Crusher, his Catonus exoskeleton clicking with amusement as he observed the newcomers through his flagship's advanced sensors. The Krex were an ancient warrior race insectoid beings who had conquered 17 star systems through superior firepower and ruthless tactics. To Krexvar, these human ships looked like primitive scrap metal held together with hope and desperation. Tactical analysis, he commanded, his mandibles clicking with bored authority. His tactical officer, younger Krex with bright green carapace markings, hunched over his sensor console. Primitive vessels, Admiral, energy signatures suggest there. Still using chemical propulsion systems and basic plasma weapon arrays. Their largest ship registers barely half the mass of our light cruisers. How quaint, Krexvar chittered, his compound eyes reflecting the tactical displays. The galaxy sends children to fight Krex warriors. How many ships dare challenge the might of our fleet? 47 vessels total, Admiral, against our 300 dreadnoughts and support craft. Krexvar's laughter was a sound like breaking glass mixed with grinding metal. In 8 centuries of conquest, no enemy had ever been foolish enough to engage the Krex Empire with such pathetic odds. Activated the fleet-wide communications array, his voice carrying the arrogant confidence of a predator addressing prey. Unknown fleet, you have entered territory claimed by the Krex Empire. Withdraw immediately or face complete annihilation. You have one opportunity to preserve your pathetic lives. The response came almost instantly, transmitted on an open channel. From the lead human vessel, a young human female appeared on his main screen, her dark hair pulled back severely, her uniform simple and functional. But her eyes. There was something in her eyes that made even Krexvar's ancient warrior instincts stir uneasily. This is Admiral Park Hajin of the Terran Defense Force. You are illegally occupying Zilani sovereign space and holding 3 billion civilians hostage. You're ordered to withdraw all military assets immediately. You have 60 seconds to begin movement, or we will consider you hostile combatants. Krexvar's bridge erupted in chittering laughter from his crew. The audacity was beyond comprehension. 47 primitive ships demanding the surrender of 300 advanced war vessels. 60 seconds? Krexvar's amusement echoed through his flagship. Little human female, you dare threaten the Krex Empire. We have conquered worlds when your species was still crawling in mud. Surrender now, and we may allow some of you to serve. As slaves, the human's expression never changed. Her voice remained calm, professional, almost bored. 59 seconds. Admiral, his tactical officer interjected nervously. Their weapons are powering up. All 47 ships are assuming attack formation. Let them come, Krexvar snarled. We will crush them like insects and broadcast their destruction across the galaxy as a warning to any who would challenge Krex supremacy. When the 60-second countdown reached 0, hell itself erupted across the Zilani star system. The humans didn't engage in the ritualized combat that had defined galactic warfare for millennia. There were no formal challenges, no gradual escalation, no opportunity for honorable surrender. The human fleet simply attacked with a ferocity that defied every known military doctrine. Captain. All weapons blazed simultaneously, particle beam arrays that carved through Krex armor plating like cutting torches through paper. Missile swarms that bracketed enemy vessels in nuclear fire, and railgun projectiles that struck with the force of asteroids. But the truly shocking revelation came when human ships began running out of ammunition, instead of withdrawing to rearm. They did something that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They rammed enemy vessels at full speed, turning their own ships into guided projectiles. Commander Song Minji's destroyer, the Soul's Fury, found herself surrounded by 3 Krex heavy cruisers after her missile magazines ran dry. Her ship was taking critical damage, plasma fire eating through her hull like acid through flesh. Any sane commander would have ordered retreat. Instead, Song activated fleet communications one final time. "All units, this is Soul's Fury. We're going nuclear. Clear the blast radius." She ordered maximum engine power and drove her ship directly into the center of the enemy formation. The Soul's Fury's reactor core detonated in a miniature star, vaporizing all three Krex cruisers in a blast that lit up half the star system. Aboard the Iron Phoenix, Ambassador Thelver watched the tactical display with growing horror and fascination. His scaled hands shook as he witnessed destruction on a scale that his peaceful species had never imagined. "By the void," he whispered, his universal translator barely keeping up with his rapid speech. "They fight like demons unleashed from the deepest darkness." Captain Kim, his uniform scorched from a brief hull breach, turned to correct the alien diplomat while coordinating his ship's attack runs. "No, Ambassador, we fight like humans. There's an important difference. Demons fight. For evil and chaos, we fight for our friends." As if to emphasize his point, another human vessel, the cruiser Bazan's Pride, executed a ramming attack against a Krex battleship twice her size. The collision sent both ships spinning into the void, but the human crew had already evacuated. In escape pods, while their ship's autopilot delivered one final blow against the enemy. The battle raged for 6 brutal hours. When the plasma fire finally cleared and the debris cloud settled, the impossible had happened. The Krex blockade was broken. 2/3 of their 300-ship fleet lay destroyed or disabled, drifting hulks, bleeding atmosphere and crew into the vacuum of space. But Krexvar's reinforcements were already arriving. New contacts appeared on sensors as additional Krex battle groups jumped into the system. Fresh ships, full magazines, crews eager for revenge against the humans who had humiliated the Empire's finest fleet. Admiral Park's voice cut through the tactical chatter on all human frequencies, calm and professional despite the odds stacking against them. "All units, this is Phoenix Command. Enemy reinforcements detected. Current tactical assessment shows we are now outnumbered 4-1. A brief pause filled the communication channel. Then Park's voice returned, and there was something in her tone that made every human crew member smile grimly. "Excellent. Now it's a fair fight." The second wave of battle was about to begin, and the Krex Empire was about to learn why humans were the apex predators of the most dangerous world in known space. Retros, the second wave of Krex reinforcements, dropped out of hyperspace with the confidence of predators arriving to finish wounded prey. Admiral Krexvar's compound eyes gleamed with satisfaction as his sensors registered over 400 fresh warships, more than enough to crush the remaining human vessels and teach the galaxy a lesson about challenging Krex supremacy. But something was wrong. The human fleet wasn't scattered and damaged as expected. Instead, Admiral Park's 47 ships had reformed into a perfect defensive sphere around the Zilani homeworld. Their weapons trained outward like the spines of some massive space creature. Worse, the humans appeared to be ... waiting. "Admiral," his sensor operator's voice cracked with growing alarm. "We're detecting massive energy signatures at the hyperspace jump points. Something big is coming through." Before Krexvar could respond, space itself began to tear open in dozens of locations throughout the star system. The hyperspace rifts were larger than anything the Krex had ever witnessed. Wounds in reality itself that seemed to bleed darkness into normal space. What emerged from those rifts defied every tactical manual in the Krex military database. The new human vessels weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were mobile cities of war, each one dwarfing even the largest Krex dreadnoughts. Where the first human fleet had looked crude but functional, these newcomers were obviously built by a species that had perfected the art of orbital destruction. The lead vessel alone was larger than most space stations. Its hull bristled with weapon arrays that could have served as primary armament for entire fleets. Massive hangar bays lined its sides, each one capable of housing hundreds of fighter craft. And along its spine ran what appeared to be a single cannon the size of a city block. Admiral Park's voice cut through both fleets. Communication channels with the same calm professionalism she might use to order coffee. Krex forces. You have continued hostile actions against our allies, despite clear warnings. We are escalating our response accordingly. The massive newcomer's communication array activated, and a new human voice filled the void. This one belonged to an older man, whose tone suggested decades of turning enemy fleets into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. This is Admiral Yoon Jae-soon, commanding Task Force Retribution. We have 48 heavy battleships, 12 planetary assault carriers, in full authorization for strategic interdiction operations against military targets. Captain Kim watched as Ambassador Thelver S. for arms began shaking uncontrollably. The alien diplomat's scaled skin shifting through colors that his species normally reserved for mortal terror. Captain Kim Thelver S. translator struggled with the rapid-fire alien speech. What does your admiral mean by planetary interdiction operations? Kim glanced at the alien with the same casual expression he might use to discuss the weather. It means we can crack worlds, Ambassador. We prefer not to. It's messy and tends to upset the neighbors. But the Krex Empire needs to understand exactly what they're fighting against. Before Thelver could process this information fully, the space battle resumed with an intensity that redefined galactic concepts of warfare. The human vessels deployed weapons that violated multiple interstellar conventions and several laws of physics. Gravity bombs erupted from human launchers, creating localized singularities that crushed Krex dreadnoughts into points of super-compressed matter before allowing them to explode in bursts of exotic radiation. Nanoswarm torpedoes struck enemy holes and began consuming the ships from within, turning advanced armor plating into clouds of component atoms. But perhaps most terrifying were the boarding operations. Human assault pods, each one the size of a small fighter, punched through Krex hulls and disgorged soldiers in powered armor who fought room by room through captured vessels. The humans didn't just destroy enemy ships, they took them apart piece by piece. While the crews were still aboard, Admiral Krexvar watched his reinforcement fleet being systematically dismantled when the true demonstration of human military capability began. Admiral Yoon's flagship, the massive dreadnought Inchin's Wrath, rotated slowly to bring its spine-mounted cannon to bear on an uninhabited moon orbiting the system's outer gas giant. All units observe and record, Yoon's voice carried across all frequencies. This is a standard demonstration of human strategic capability. A single projectile, barely visible to sensors, streaked from the human flagship toward the distant moon. The projectile moved at a significant fraction of light speed, crossing the enormous distance in less than 30 seconds. The impact was visible from 3 star systems away. The moon didn't simply explode. It cracked like an egg being struck by a hammer. Massive chunks of planetary crust spun away from the impact site, while the core erupted in a fountain of molten rock that painted half the star system in glowing debris. Aboard the Iron Phoenix, every alien observer fell silent. Thelver's translator simply gave up trying to process the stream of panicked clicking and whistling emerging from the Zilani diplomat's throat. "This concludes our demonstration," Admiral Park announced with the same calm tone she had maintained throughout the engagement. Krex High Command has 12 hours to order complete withdrawal from Zilani space and all occupied territories. Failure to comply will result in strategic bombardment of designated military targets. We do not negotiate with hostage takers. In the depths of space, Admiral Krexvar stared at the expanding debris field that had once been a celestial body. His species had conquered 17 star systems through superior firepower and tactical doctrine, but they had never faced an enemy that treated world-killing weapons as standard military equipment. "Signal all fleets," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "General withdrawal to minimum safe distance. Await instructions from High Command." But Admiral Park's next transmission made his eye-core run cold with dread. "Admiral Yoon, initiate deployment of the Seoul Defense Grid. If the Krex are calling for additional reinforcements, it's ensure those reinforcements have to come through us first." What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. Massive human installations began materializing throughout the Zilani star system, not ships, but mobile fortress platforms that made the battleships look like escort craft. Each platform was a self-contained military base capable of independent operation for decades. They carried manufacturing facilities to build more weapons, repair bays to maintain the fleet, and enough firepower to sterilize entire planets. The platforms arranged themselves in a three-dimensional defensive grid that turned the star system into the most heavily fortified location in known space. Humanity hadn't just sent a rescue fleet to save their allies. They had brought the infrastructure to occupy and hold the entire star system indefinitely, turning it into a forward military base from which they could project power across the entire galactic region as the sole defense. Grid came online and began scanning for additional threats. One truth became clear to every observer. The humans weren't just here to rescue the Zilani. They were here to stay, and they had just announced to the galaxy that attacking human allies would result in immediate military occupation of your territory. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be written in the wreckage of those foolish enough to threaten their friends. The Krex Empire's unconditional surrender came. 72 hours after humanity demonstrated they could deploy planet-killer weapons with the same casual efficiency that other species used for routine patrol missions. The formal ceremony took place aboard Admiral Park's flagship, the Soul's Hammer, with representatives from dozens of galactic civilizations watching through holographic transmissions in stunned silence. The ship's main conference room had been hastily converted into a diplomatic venue, though the human vessel's military nature was impossible to disguise. Weapon control panels lined the walls. Tactical displays showed real-time fleet positions. The low hum of active defense systems provided a constant reminder of the devastating power that had surrounded the proceedings. Ambassador Thelver stood beside the main negotiation table, his forearms trembling slightly as he served as translator between the human delegation and the Krex surrender party. The Zilani diplomat had aged visibly during the crisis, his scales showing stress patterns that would take months to fade. But his eyes held a gratitude that needed no translation. Krex. War leader Murgath entered the room flanked by two human guards in powered armor. The ancient warrior's chitinous exoskeleton, once polished to mirror brightness as a symbol of Krex military pride, now showed the scars and burns of recent combat. His compound eyes darted nervously between the human officials as he approached. The surrender documents. The Krex Empire formally surrenders all territorial claims in Zilani space and surrounding systems. Admiral Park read from the treaty with the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout the conflict. All occupied worlds are to be evacuated within 90 standard days. Military installations are to be dismantled and removed. War reparations will be paid to affected civilizations over a period of 50 standard years. Murgath's claws shook as he affixed his biosignature to terms that would reshape galactic politics forever. Each clause represented the collapse of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Brought down by a species that most civilizations had dismissed as primitive Deathworlders. But the real shock came when the gathered representatives reviewed humanity's demands for themselves. Absolutely nothing. Galactic Council Representative Vexstar, his compound eyes reflecting obvious confusion, leaned forward in his hover chair. Admiral Park, surely Earth requires some form of compensation for this massive military action. Territory, resources, preferential trade agreements? Park looked genuinely puzzled by the question, as if Vexstar had asked her why water was wet. Representative Vexstar, the Zilani, called for help. What compensation do you expect us to demand from friends who needed our assistance? The silence that followed was profound. In a galaxy where military actions were typically motivated by territorial expansion, resource acquisition, or political leverage, humanity's complete lack of self-interest was incomprehensible to most species. Counselor Murden, the ancient tree-like being who had first suggested contacting Earth, spoke in his creaking voice. Admiral, your species deployed weapons capable of destroying star systems. You risked thousands of lives and countless resources. Surely there must be some benefit Earth seeks. The benefit, Captain Kim interjected from his position near the tactical displays, is knowing that our friends are safe. that children can sleep peacefully in their beds instead of hiding in bomb shelters. Parents don't have to watch their world burn from orbit. The negotiations that followed established humanity as the galaxy's newest military superpower. But through an unprecedented path, instead of demanding tribute or territory, Earth's representatives focused on defense treaties, cultural exchange programs, and mutual aid agreements. Species after species approached the human delegation with requests that ranged from military protection to technological cooperation. The Andorian Collective, recent victims of Krek's aggression, asked for defensive alliances. The Spiral Arm Mining Consortium requested human security forces to protect their operations from raiders. Even former neutral powers began seeking Earth's friendship as insurance against future threats. 3 months after the Krek's surrender, Captain Kim found himself assigned as Earth's military attached to the rebuilt Zilani homeworld. Walking through the capital city of Cathara Prime, he watched a civilization healing from the wounds of war. Construction crews worked alongside human engineers to rebuild damaged infrastructure, while Zilani children played in parks that had been bomb craters just months before. The children fascinated Kim the most. They showed no fear of the human soldiers patrolling their streets instead. They ran up to touch the strange fabric of human uniforms and offered small gifts of colorful stones and hand-drawn pictures. Their parents watched with expressions of gratitude so profound that Kim often had to look away. Captain Kim. Thelver approached one afternoon as Kim observed a group of Zilani youngsters teaching human marines a traditional ball game. The ambassador's scales had returned to their healthy blue-green color, and his forearms moved with renewed confidence. My people have asked me to pose a question that puzzles us greatly. Kim turned from watching a 2-meter-tall human soldier being thoroughly defeated at the game by children half his size. What question is that, Ambassador? Why did humans risk so much for strangers? You species had never met us before our distress call. We had no treaties, no trade agreements, no diplomatic relations. Yet you deployed your entire military to save us. Thelver's eyes reflected genuine bewilderment. In all galactic history, no species has ever made such sacrifices for unknown aliens. Kim considered the question seriously, watching as the human marine good-naturedly accepted defeat and allowed the children to examine his powered armor. Because you asked for help, Ambassador? Because you needed it? Because leaving friends to die when we could prevent it isn't who we want to be as a species. But we weren't friends, Thelver insisted. We were strangers. Anyone who needs help is a potential friend, Kim replied simply.
Right.
Anyone who calls for aid against oppression is someone we want to know better.
Right.
6 months after the Krek surrender, 2 phrases had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Protected by Deathworlders became the most effective deterrent against aggression that the civilized worlds had ever known. Pirates, slavers, and would-be conquerors learned to avoid any system that displayed Earth's friendship. But more importantly, allied with humans became synonymous with trust, loyalty, the absolute certainty that someone would always answer when you called for help. It meant that somewhere in the galaxy, a species existed that valued friendship above profit, that considered the protection of innocence worth any sacrifice, and that would cross the void itself to stand beside those who needed them. The Zilani became humanity's first formal allies, but they were far from the last. Within a year, the Terran Defense Alliance included 47 different species, each one protected by the promise that Earth's forces would respond to any threat with overwhelming force and unwavering determination. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their planet-cracking missiles or their reality-bending technology. Their true strength lay in something far more dangerous to tyrants and oppressors. The complete understanding that real power came not from the ability to destroy enemies, but from the wisdom to know when mercy was strength and when violence was the only language that bullies understood. The galaxy had found its guardians, and they came from the most dangerous world known to science, a place where only the strongest survived, and the strongest had learned that protecting others was the highest form of strength, the end